So today it's been my absolute pleasure to welcome David Lindley from By Design down to Worcestershire, and he's joined me today on the Towpath, where we've discussed all about the prime property market, what good looks like, his thoughts and opinions, a bit about his history in the estate agency industry, and also what his thoughts are about the future. Hope you enjoy the next 20 minutes or so. When did you start at Fine & Country then?
In 2010, I think it was, and this is when there was two companies. There was that were running together really. There was the Guild of what it was called then, Professional Estate Agents, and Fine & Country. And so the role there, it was funny actually, yesterday I did this podcast with Paul Jameson from 20 and he and I started together there. And we were talking about websites and things like that, and our job was selling websites. They weren't very good ones.
Just pages with a few buttons on it,
to independent estate agents. And then, to cut a long story short, the businesses grew and effectively separated because you needed sort of specialised teams on the two of them as they both grew. End up in the Fine & Country side of the business, which I really loved, and then.
So how did that happen? What sort of took you from that guild side to the Fine & Country side? What was the process there?
There was a bit of a push and a pull. The pull was that I always loved the brand, loved working in the premium end of the market. And even from the guild perspective, there was always the mission to push agents up market. And that's still true today in everything we're doing in By Design, but even with the newsletters and the podcasts and everything. Going up market, no matter what that means to you, is, I think, a sensible strategy for agents to adopt because of so many reasons we'll probably get into. So that was that reason. And the other reason was that the person who was running the brand at that time left quite quickly. Just put it that way.
Okay. Probably best to move on from that bit.
Through certain circumstances. And so there was a push and a pull factor to it, but it was great. And loved the brand and really loved the people, the network especially of agents where lots of them ended up just being friends really more than anything else. And that was
quite close collaborative working environment. And
exactly. And yeah, that was really special. So that was great. And then things change as they do. The business was sold, and then that changes culture and direction and so on. And then it was a funny thing we were sort of saying off air earlier.
Morning.
I left that business in COVID, when COVID really kicked off.
Yes.
And it was a funny thing because COVID did obviously made a lot of changes, but everything seemed to accelerate.
Really did, didn't it?
Yeah.
It was quite, I don't think anybody knew what was going to happen, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think, it really, it changed things in a way that nobody was quite expecting.
That's it. And decisions were made quickly, as they had to be, because everyone had to adopt to a very different way of working and a different way of living. And it accelerated a bit of a gap. And I said this at the time, and this was a bit of a, to be honest with you, kind of a corporate-y, bullshitty way of explaining why I left FEC. But it was that I said that my values and the company's values were increasingly far apart.
Right, okay.
And I've since actually got to learn about values, and now I actually understand that was the reality. Because if your values aren't in alignment, then everything else goes off kilter.
Selling and something you don't really believe in as well, which is hard to do, isn't it?
Yeah, just decisions that are made that you wouldn't make, that are outside of your control, and you think just call it a day before things get worse.
Because they do. Because that gap doesn't get any shorter, does it? It gets wider and wider. Yeah.
Exactly. And you can be 1 degree off course now, but in a year's time you'll be miles and miles apart from each other. So left F&C and then. Getting way ahead of myself here, but then started By Design with the two business partners, Matt and Mark.
Yep.
I think you know. And here we are today.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So what was it that when you decided that By Design was going to be a thing? Who came up with the name? First of all, whose idea was that?
That's a great question. So I tried, and when I say I tried, I'm not exaggerating here, 300 names. And I promise you, I've counted them.
Give us some of the good
I can't even tell you how bad they were. And I tried, and I thought I was going to lose my mind at one point trying to come up with a name that was not cliched, that was somehow relevant, but wasn't pinning the tail on the donkey too much. Because sometimes you can be too obvious, especially with a premium brand. You can be too obvious with it, and then it doesn't work. And I did a webinar with Relocation Agent Network recently. We gave some examples like Rolex isn't called posh watches, or Aston Martin isn't called fancy cars. No one would. So it's too obvious and it doesn't work. So anyway,
Ron Seal transcends all of that now because it's become the buzzword, isn't it? But yeah,
exactly. Okay. So in the end, I worked with someone who is a branding specialist, and it's funny. You really learn the value of a professional at something. And you think, oh, that was the best money I ever spent. Yeah. It saved me my sanity more than anything else. And we went through a whole process together. He wasn't just coming up with random names. He goes through a whole process of why and what you want
the psychology behind it, rather than
yeah, exactly. So that it was much more considered. And as soon as he came up with it, I fell in love with it, and I love it because it speaks for more than what it just is on paper.
It's brilliant. But it's really annoying all at the same time because it's one of my phrases that I use a lot. Like, I mean, that wasn't by design, not them, the other thing. You've got to censor yourself. So I have to caveat everything I say now. But no, I love it. I think it looks great. It looks slick.
Oh, that's very
really,
kind.
Really modern, and it just has that sort of lovely feel to it. It looks like if you touched it, it would have that lovely matte finish. It does have that lovely feel to it.
Where did Chartwell Noble come from? What was the story there?
Oh God. So in its sort of original form was. Family businesses, Chartwell was always a thing, and between the three of us, three business partners, we sat down and so Chartwell, Winston Churchill's house, has a degree of sophistication or heritage about it, and then we knew that we wanted to have something that would fit in amongst the premium brand but not be modern and new, that felt like it, Knight Frank, Stratton Parker, Chartwell Noble, it would fit in. So we knew we needed a second word. Yeah. But the original conversation, which I'm not allowed to talk about very much, which I'm going to do now, and Stuart is over there and he's going to shout at me, so if you hear him off camera or a stick lands over my head, that's why. But Wolf of Wall Street, Stratton Oakmont.
Yeah. I remember that scene.
That name has always stuck in my head as something you go, it's got real panache. And it's not like that, but it just sort of felt that sort of, we need something that's two words, has history, has legacy. Yeah. So we
reminds me a bit of Berkshire Hathaway from Warren Buffett. I don't know what the story is there, but it has that kind of
similar sort of resonation. Yeah. So that's where that came from. But yes, it was a decision that wasn't it was a long thought out. Like you. God, we came up with some corkers.
One day we should get them all out.
Yeah, maybe. We'll put them on a big board somewhere and throw darts at them. But yeah. So with By Design, obviously you came up with the name. You had a vision as to what you wanted it to look like and feel like. But obviously there's something that looks and feels, and then there's something that is more. You don't just do something. You don't start something to repeat something, do you? You want to obviously become you want to be different, you want to disrupt. So what was that? What was it that made you think, do you know what, I'm going to get out of fine and country, I'm going to join with Mark and Matt and I'm going to do something really different? What was that?
A big part of what was different about it is, so obviously got a lot of love still for the F&C brand and everything, because it's too
family
hard
legacy,
to disassociate.
Essentially.
But I think and this is no fault of anyone's, it's too hard to undo, but it was a bit of a network sometimes in name only, that you'd have lots of offices and bricks and mortar locations and so on that would have the name above the door, but what it actually wasn't was properly networked together. So Mark, my business partner, runs a company called Iceberg Digital, and he has a CRM called Lifecycle, which is a particularly advanced CRM system and so on. And we sat down at the start and said, well, look, we should run it on Lifecycle. We both agreed that. Yep. And we had a conversation, we said, should we suggest that people use Lifecycle to run their business on, or do we insist on it? And we said, actually, we should insist on it, and maybe we'll grow slower as a result of that. It hasn't been the case, but we were prepared to take that risk. Yeah. But what it meant is that it was actually really networked. Yeah. So showing my naivety, I said to Mark in the early stages, I said, Mark, could you build a referral system that I was obviously used to, keep passing buyers and sellers around the country, and people would put the details in and send them off to someone else? Yeah. And he said, yeah, I'm pretty sure we could build that. And then I sat and thought about it and thought, wait, we don't need that. If everything is actually networked up, well, more than the culture, actually, to be honest with you, it's the culture is right, but the technology underneath that if you have everything in one big database underneath it, you don't need to have that manual human error sometimes of waiting for someone to pass an opportunity across. And, we're not in the volume game. The opportunities are few and far between, but they're very, very important.
So talk to me about that then?
Yeah, so it's using the technology. So if everyone's in the same database, first of all, then and it is very, very transparent. Everyone sees everything from fees, opportunities to data and so on. But that's where the power of it is. So we have on the buyer side, we've got one big network and database of high net worth buyers, and on the opportunity side of it for sellers as well. So the way that it works is if someone in, let's just say, Hertfordshire wanted to book in a viewing for a property in Lincolnshire, let's just say, then they do that. But the agent the agent in Hertfordshire, they get a notification that person has booked a viewing with a property in Lincolnshire. So they think, well, okay, that's the inside track against the competition to say you should give them a call about maybe selling their home.
Like that, yeah.
And that's
joined up thinking, isn't it, really?
Joined up thinking.
Well, it's sort of agency at its core, is it not? But you're prompting that.
Yes, and I think that's where the technology is really important. So that's a big difference, or something we wanted to build it on, and we knew that Mark and I got together in the first place because we see things quite similarly. We're very, very different, but we saw that data play in the same way as well. And I think that's the long term of what we're building, which is really exciting.
It's really interesting, isn't it, that your approach, having leveraged modern tech, sort of very similar to ours. We're with Street Group, working with Heather and the team there, and we love working with them. They're fantastic, and they're very open to suggestions in the same way that clearly Mark, obviously be having a vested interest in it. But for us, what's really powerful that we've found is exactly what you've just said, is that ability to have some joined up thinking between your partner agents or between your licensees or whatever you call them. And I think that the old school agency approach, which has been lost, isn't it, for a long time, because tech has taken over. It's interesting how now tech has almost re-enabled that joined up thinking, and sort of given that sort of sense of sort of referral and collaboration, and sort of it's joined people together back in a way, because where it was flip boxes and cards before, now it's not.
It's funny where we thought technology might have taken the industry when Purple Bricks, wind the clock back 10 years or so, Purple Bricks were in the heyday, valued at over $1 million. Online agency was the wolf at the door that was going to take down the industry and send estate agents the same way as travel agents, but it's not been the case.
So would you consider yourself to be an online estate agency?
It's always a difficult thing defining what an online estate agency is now. It's like all estate agencies are online, but I think in what we would call an online estate agency would be a Strike or a Purple Bricks or something like that was a low cost fixed fee, much more. If you have a range of services, on one hand you've got a full service estate agency, which we probably are. In the middle you've got done with you, and at the other end of the spectrum you've got do it yourself. That's typically the three consumer propositions that you would have, not just in agency but in anything. I would say the online estate agency is as close to the do-it-yourself as you possibly can. Rightmove was basically, Purple Bricks was basically a way for people to get on Rightmove.
Exactly, it was a feed, wasn't it?
And it's just been fascinating how that didn't seem to. Well, when the marketing taps were turned off, it doesn't seem to have had that continuation and cut through and resonance with consumers like more traditional agency has. So even though they say yes, we are online, and no, we're not on the high street, I'll still say that it is traditional agency probably at its best. And if anything, the whole dynamic of the market's gone the complete other way, where what I believe is, especially in the premium market, where I think we're both orientated, is consumers want not an online agency, not just an agency, but they want the same person from market appraisal through to completion, that personal service.
That cradle to grave approach.
And someone that they know, like and trust at the start of that process, and that they can be on WhatsApp groups with, they've got that personal connection with, right the way through to the end. They're trusted advisor.
Yeah, we had a conversation this morning in our morning meetings, because we sort of opened the doors virtually at 9 o'clock, 9:15, and go, look, I'm sat here waiting for you if you want to jump in, which everybody does, which is great, and sort of shoot the breeze. And I sent a message to my business partner Stuart and George last night saying, it's fabulous. It's 11 o'clock at night and I've got emails and WhatsApps flying around with people making stuff happen.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get that in the 10 years ago agency in the way that you're getting it now.
Yeah.
And whilst some people may look and hear that and go, God, that sounds awful. Why on earth would I want to be in that world? It's like, no, these are people who want that. They know the power of that, aren't they? They sort of feel it, and it's sort of tangible at that point. You can almost, like, I know what's happening, because I'm getting a text message at 7 o'clock. but I'm responding to that text message. But not only that, I'm responding because I've had to ask somebody something who's come back to me, and I've gone back to them, and they can actually feel that you're trying to batter me down on fee, and yet still you're asking me something at 7, 8 and 9 o'clock at night. So it's quite interesting, isn't it, that sort of shift. So in terms of what next looks like, so we, as you say, we tend to operate in the sort of higher values. We tend to operate in the prettier properties, the more luxury properties. And whilst there's some similarity in terms of what By Design does and Chartwell Noble does, we're always quite comfortable with the fact that we're looking at things from two very different perspectives. What do you think is next? So if you got your crystal ball, dangerous one, we're going to hold you to it as well, and there's cameras, so you're on record.
I'll give like 3 answers, we'll edit it, and whichever one comes out right.
Good, medium, bad, yeah. But what would you like to see then? Let's change that perspective. Let's not say what are you expecting. What would you like to see? Because obviously you know what good looks like. You've come from you've got heritage with your father being sort of integral to the start of Fine & Country. Your time there, you've worked in amazing brands, you've created a great brand. What would you like to see, not just for yourselves, but for the industry as a sector in the prime end of the market, sort of subprime, prime, super prime, country, luxury, lifestyle, in cities, whatever? What would you like to see? What would good look like to you?
So maybe you can sort of class this a little bit as a controversial opinion, but it's one I can actually back up a little bit. And it's something that I saw and I was really excited about. And this sounds ironic to say I was excited about it, but I am. So in 2024, the top 10 agents for listing and selling properties above £750,000, so whether you call that premium or prime or what have you, all 10 of them lost market share. And they weren't losing it to another one. It wasn't like the ninth had suddenly had a load
each other out.
And then a load of investment in and taking it off the others or something. It wasn't the case. They'd all had their market shares eroded. And that, I think, is brilliant. That shows that there is massive opportunity in that premium market, that customers are, on one side, either disenfranchised with the service they're getting from big household names, or they can be shown another way, that if there are agencies out there that are properly investing in their marketing, in their service, in their property presentation, then they will be attracted to that. Because what I think those stats show is there are lots of smaller companies all around the country that are all pushing up market into that more premium end of the marketplace.
It's not so tricky to get into anymore because they've got the tools and the capability to do it.
Yes, it's not so much of a perception of a little black book of buyers somewhere that are exclusive to one particular agency, and therefore that's why they should be instructed. So the thing that I would, from an industry perspective, the thing that I'd like to see most is from the look of the stats, is actually happening, and I think that's hugely exciting.
Because there was a time, wasn't there, when we've laughed about this before, that you open up the front 10 pages of the Country Life magazine, and you knew who was going to be in there. You still do, actually, because they're still there, exactly the same spots. Yeah. And whilst there's not necessarily new names going in there, or as many new names, there are new companies able to service it in the same way, if not better. I dare say better is the wrong word, perhaps, but in a more advanced and modern way, leveraging that sort of what we call, traditional values, but a modern approach, sort of backed up by the tech and all the bits and bobs that we've talked about.
I was laughing with Simon Ledbetter last night, actually. I was saying that you said bring your big Coke, so we're going for a walk, and I said, all I've got is this. You look like the landed country house owner, and I look like I'm here to case the joint.
Well, you get some underpass. Yeah, it's a graffitied underpass. Yeah,
that's where you found me. Actually, just under there.
We did first meet in a dodgy underpass. That's another story for another. That's another podcast. It's not important right now.
Save that for when you go on Property Porn Stars. That's probably more appropriate for them.
Yeah. So okay. So I asked about your controversial opinion. Well, and you sort of threw it back at me, so you can have some time to think about it. But so I don't know if it's a controversial opinion, but we were discussing it this morning before you arrived, that one of the biggest problems we've got as an industry, I think, with those of us who are trying to raise the bar, to elevate the game, to get good people to do really great things, is if you think, how many estate agencies are there in the UK?
I don't
20,000 plus, something like that. And if you think, let's just say, pull some numbers out of the air, a couple of branches each maybe on average, probably not, but so that's going to be 40 odd thousand estate agency branches, 40, 50,000. I think that's the number I saw banded around a few years ago. And if you think there's maybe a couple of people in each of those, maybe, then is that 100,000 estate agents? Is there more? I honestly don't know. But let's just use that because it's a nice, easy one for maths.
Yeah.
So 100,000 estate agents. So then you go to the ESTAs, or the EA Masters, or you go to any insert name of award ceremony here, or conference here. How many people are in there? 1,000?
Yeah, the biggest ones.
Yeah, so that's 1% of the industry. Okay, that's why I had to stick with 100,000 because maths isn't great. So you've got 1% who are actually live and in the room, and then maybe you've got 2 or 3, 5 maybe people who are aware of it in the immediate vicinity of those who are in the room. So that's then 5,000 people who are immediately impacted by the learnings and the information that's obtained through these things. So that's 5,000 people. That's 5%, if my maths, isn't butchering it too badly. So that's only 5%. Now let's, for margins of acceptability, double that to 10%.
Yeah.
So we, right now, you and I, are having this conversation, and let's say I'm going to put some money into boosting this on LinkedIn, so we get it to as many people as we possibly can, not just my 5,000 followers or whatever.
Yeah.
How do we get to the rest of them? How do we get to these people? Because there's some huge talent in the industry who, if they just lifted themselves out of their four walls syndrome, I call it, where they only know what they know, and we help them, and we elevate them, and we push and promote them. How do we do that?
It's a really good point.
Because we're preaching to the converted a lot of the time, aren't we?
No, that's exactly it. Two thoughts. I was having this discussion with someone. So I, will work hard on, say, for example, we talked about this morning, creating a press release that'll hopefully get some coverage in one of the industry press outlets. You've got your sort of big three, Estate Agents Day, Property Industry Eye, The Negotiator, and there are others as well. And then, it's funny, I looked at one of them the other day and I had something, an article that I'd written was published. And I think it maybe had sort of 2,000 views or something, and for that day's news, that was probably average, maybe a little bit better than average. Well, okay, but well, that's interesting. And you sort of, on one hand, feel quite good about getting something published, and on the other hand, you're a little bit nervous about putting something out there because you're putting your head above the parapet and so on. And you think, hang on a minute, I can put something on LinkedIn and easily get 2,000 reads of whatever it is. Yeah. Is this actually all it's cracked up to be? And then the other thought, which come back to what you said there, is it's a little bit of you are right, can be sometimes an echo chamber.
Very much
what we're
so,
talking to on socials, on LinkedIn and everything. And it can be quite hard to break through that noise and to reach the people that you'd want to be speaking to, for example, about Chartwell Noble. But the reality is, and maybe this is just my opinion, is that really good estate agents are the ones that are really, really focused on their communities, on their areas, and they are looking at that almost through a microscope.
They're
so
in a
they
silo,
should,
aren't they?
because they're so focused on what everybody's doing in there, and they're putting deals together, and they can help people if they understand the situation better. So they have to be that focused and looking down at it. So they're not really worried like we would be from a business to business sense in the industry as well. That's
because
not really.
They're going about getting on with the job, aren't they?
Yeah, that's their job, and so it kind of comes with the territory a little bit. You have to shout quite loudly. As we discussed off air as well, we've just taken a step where we've just taken on a new member of the team at By Design in Paul Quintanilla, who's focused on recruitment. That's what he's been doing in the premium market. Just last year alone, he recruited 60 premium self-employed agents to his previous role, which is going some.
So it's drawing people from that siloed world where they are focused, office-based, purely working in their teams, and actually pulling them into that sort of whole new world that we're talking about.
Yeah, he's got the tools and the connections and the skills to cut through that noise and have conversations. And that for us is twofold. One is for new licensees who want to have their own premium estate agency business through By Design, and then in turn, most of them want to have teams of self-employed agents working in their businesses as well, and that's what Paul's going to be doing for them too. So that's, coming back to your point, that's a step that we've taken to try and cut through one of those four walls, so to speak. I suppose when you said a controversial opinion, I'm thinking, how Russell Quirk do I go here? And I don't necessarily think that this would probably fall into the camp of controversial, because I don't think I have opinions that are too wildly controversial. But what I would say is I do think that we're in a real period of change in the industry now. And you've probably seen this. We've gone through waves. We had the corporate wave, and then the online wave, and now we've got a wave of what you would just, if you lump a lot of change in together, just call it the self-employment wave in agency. Yeah. And that's come as a result that I think that traditional setup estate agencies probably getting increasingly hard and increasingly challenging, especially in the volume market, for all sorts of reasons. You've got the NI increases that are going up. You've got teams of employed members of staff, NI increases going up, minimum wages going up, and
there's a lot of things.
Most of the salaries that they're offering are not that competitive out there for the person that you would want for it, and then it becomes a sort of spiral almost of having.
Well, of course, minimum wage is now matching what it's only a short distance away from what a standard neg, in inverted commas, I hate to use the word standard, but even a good neg is on as a basic.
There was a fantastic article that Adam Walker, who's the sort of broker of estate agency businesses, wrote, and he said that you're not going to get someone that's far off a minimum wage job to do this anyway, and they're doing it under quite a lot of pressure sometimes, with highly emotionally charged situations, long hours,
I think
in
we
an
forget
office.
that sometimes, isn't it? That sort of move away from the traditional inverted commas is that a lot of people are just going, well, I've just got to book some viewings, I've got to take orders and book some appointments. Actually, no, you're carrying people through. So trying to find those people who get that,
it's really hard.
But then you've got to reward them and keep them, haven't you?
And then if you're doing that in the volume market as well, then you have to take on a volume. So your overheads have gone up because you've got all those team members there that are now being paid more. And of course, if you're paying the first person to the business a higher rate now, then the next person has to be paid more, and so on and so on. I had a dinner with someone last week who runs a big, call it a chain, but a decent outfit, and he says all these increased costs are going to cost their business £1 million.
Ouch.
It's absolutely insane. So you have all of these increased costs. So you have to take on more stock to keep your margins.
But
if you're not getting the
exactly.
higher fees, and the average is about 1.1 across the country, which sometimes can be a little bit generous as well.
Yeah.
If you're not getting those fees, and you have to take on even more stock to do it as well, then you need more people to service the stock, and it becomes really, really hard. And this self-employment wave that we're in now, I think, is because by and large that model is very hard to get right, and isn't necessarily serving estate agency business owners or the people within them that well for the most part. And that's why that's
really interesting, because that's
so
there you go,
exciting.
there's your controversial opinion, isn't it? That some of these models that we're on right now they look, to all intents and purposes, like they are there to serve the agent. I can help you earn, etc., which we all know is not true. But actually, how much are they serving the agent or serving the master? Because essentially, I posted something about this the other day. You are swapping out one boss for many, and actually, are you not only swapping out one boss for many because you have you've got clients? Let's be honest, they can be quite demanding, and if you're charging a right fee, then they're entitled to be.
Yes.
But also, on top of that, there we go. That's what we should do next time.
Oh yeah.
Morning. That's what we should do next time, isn't it?
Is that how we're getting back to the office?
Yes, literally. Yeah. You can ask them to slow down a little bit. Yeah, we'll not jump in. But you've actually also got not a paymaster as such, but you are not managed, because you've got to be careful, because they're not managed, but they are set goals, and they are set this and plans, and they've got to adhere to them. And then I see people being raised up and praised because they've done 10 grand this month. Brilliant, well done you. It's like, yeah, well, they've done bugger all for the last 3 months.
Oh, yeah.
So, hi there. They've done nothing for the last 3 months.
Yeah.
So they haven't done 10 grand, have they? They just have to average out what they've done, and then probably next month they've got nothing else in the pipeline because they've just estimated it.
It's very true.
So there's this illusion of freedom and massive earnings and all these wonderful things, but without the right structure, without the right support, it's nothing. There's nothing there.
And something I found interesting on that point was, so sat down, we did a podcast with Paul Jameson at 20EA before Christmas, and we were just after Christmas, and we were doing some stats of 2024, and he was talking about the growth in the self-employed agency market, which it had grown a lot.
Saw that, it was really interesting.
But it was there was still growth of self-employed agents in the premium market, but it was a lot less than it was in the normal market. And I thought that was really interesting, because for me at least, it seems so well suited. You've got low volumes, high service levels, that personal contact, the trust. But why is that? Why is that growth in the premium market, even in percentage terms, not been the same as the volume market? What do you think?
I think it'll come. I think the default setting is to revert back to the comfort zone, which is let's open the Country Life magazine. And it's you flick through Rightmove. And you see the names, but then when we're doing our research in areas and we're talking to people that want to come on board with us, first thing we always do is to go onto the portals and see who is the successful, who is the successful agents at the high end, same as you do, I'm sure. And then you look at the market and you look at all the different ways that market is structured and who services it and what the stock's like and what the upper quartile actually looks like. Because let's be honest, upper quartile doesn't necessarily mean £2.5 million.
No.
It could be worth £1 million, but that doesn't mean it's any, just because the values are intrinsically less doesn't mean the quality is any less. So I suppose really it depends where you're looking. Southeast is very different. I mean, your sort of Southeast agents, we don't really do a lot. We've got a couple of agents we're talking to in the Southeast, but their journey is going to be a lot more challenging than those in sort of the more rural areas or the sort of satellite areas, if you like. And I think it'll change. It'll come. I think. What you were saying earlier in terms of dilution, because there's more agents now, that's probably something we've seen for a long time in core market, and it's becoming more of a thing in the premium market. So I suspect that's probably it.
That's really interesting actually, and maybe this is something that's probably more interesting to you or I than anyone listening on here. But when we do the same thing. But what we do is we use the insight system on 20EA and then analyse a market. And then what's interesting there is you can analyse the competitors.
Yes.
So you go into an area and say, right, okay, I look for weaknesses because I'm an optimist like that. But you can look at all the companies and say, the ones I look for are the highest withdrawn numbers because that's partly vendor's fault, and then quite often there's the agent's got something to do with that. Look at fall throughs and price reductions, and where those percentages are highest, I think, well, if you wanted to start, whose stock would you maybe go after, and say would be those. But then the wider point you said, when you said about the Southeast and so on, I think you have, I've got this weird theory that you have leagues of markets. So for example, there's someone in By Design, and what we're doing is expanding her business into a new area.
Yep.
And this area is a county with a county town in. And we've broken it into two. There is the more rural part of the county, and then there is the part of it with the town in.
Yeah.
And I would say the one with the town in is like your Premier League market. You've got big names, really great agents. That's a hot market. And you can see when you look at the stats, there's very little between them. Like the market shares will be, 12%, 11%, 10, 9, 8, and then you look in the more rural area, and that's sort of a League Division 1 market.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the properties, but just how intense that market is. And you see a couple of things. One, there are fewer names with bigger market shares. It's not as hotly contested. I think, well, that is, like you said, the agents in the Southeast versus the more rural markets. You have different leagues.
Sort of a different scale of that.
Yeah. So our plan is go into that market first, crack that, and then move into the town to do it afterwards, because that's a more straightforward route to success.
Do you think so?
Yeah,
because I think I would say the other way around.
I know, and you would think so. You would think so,
yeah.
But even just my experience at F&C, it was always done in the reverse
So
of what you would
start
think.
at the epicentre and then sort of come out from there.
No, the opposite. So you start in the areas that aren't in
the
city centre or the town centre or
Become
whatever.
the expert in that patch.
You build up then into that. And I suppose also there's the trend with offices and having high street offices and whether that's needed or not. And if you're going to go into make it up, Bristol or something like that, are you going to go and have an office in the centre of Bristol or not? And there comes a problem of manning the office and staffing it and parking and Saturday road. I'm just not sure who's interested in that anymore.
My blood pressure's going up as you're saying it. I remember those days. Run a large agency with numerous branches. It just the headaches involved. So thank you, David. Enjoyed our chat today along the towpath. We started off beautiful countryside and ended up with a dual carriageway behind us, so hopefully that's not being picked up. I was trying to go for the super high country agency and luxury agencies being decimated by traffic, but there you go. But no, thank you for making the journey down on this very cold day today. Through the camera you can't quite pick that up, but it is brassic today. But thank you for your opinions. Thank you for your I haven't quite got the controversial opinion out of you fully. I think you've skirted that beautifully. But no, thank you for your time.
If I think of one, I'll send you a voice note with it.
Send me a voice note, and I'll stick it on LinkedIn.
Do I get thrown in the canal now, or?
So Stu's going, hi Biz, he's going to shove you in.
That's what he's there for.
That's it.
No,
thank you. Really appreciate it. Well done.